And hello, everyone. Welcome to another Digital Foundry live presentation. I'm John Linneman, and I am joined by some very special guests, and also a special guest, I would say, a colleague, Alex Patali up there.
Maybe you'd also say a friend, John. Friend
And colleague, of
Friend and
course.
colleague, of course.
What can I say?
Here we're today talking about the reimagining partial of Layers here.
Yes,
is gonna be really cool today.
We're gonna peel back the layers like an onion.
And doing it live with two gentlemen who have worked on the title today.
That's right. So, gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourselves and what you've done on this project?
Hello, so my name is Damian Kocurek and I'm the creative director on the project.
And I'm Michał, and I'm a technical artist in the team.
Well, it's awesome having you guys join us live for this
Thank you.
presentation. I know you haven't done many of these live shows, so... Oh, there we go. They're figuring it out. So,
Sorry, just some technical difficulties for a moment.
That's part of being live.
That's what happens.
Let's go ahead and... let's just start here in the house, actually. I'm going to kick things off. So, first of all, let me give a little background on what we're playing here. We're actually playing the Xbox Series X version of the game, as we see here. Currently, I am running this in performance mode, but there is actually a quality mode, and we're going to talk about what that actually means for the player as well here. It is nice you can swap this on the fly.
Yeah.
So if we switch to quality, it's back to 30 FPS. But yeah, so Mikhail, why don't we start here with, I guess, the beginnings. Like, when did you guys actually start working on this project? I mean, we know Unreal Engine 5 was unveiled to the public back in 2020, I want to say, fairly early on, and then here we are 3 years later. You're shipping a game. How has it been? When did it start?
Yeah.
Or can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I have some echo, and I don't understand what exactly
we're
you're
sorry.
talking.
Okay.
I apologize.
Let me rephrase the question.
Yes.
And I'll try. Hopefully, no echo. When did you start working on the project? When did the team start working on the project?
I joined to the team 2 years ago, but working was started, I think, 3 years about ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Damien could talk better exactly time, how many time, but I think it's about 3 years.
All right.
Okay, 3 years. That's pretty good. So this is, I think, Alex, this is the first game, third-party game to like sort of arrive that's making use of one of the major features of Unreal Engine 5, I believe.
Yeah, to
aside
be
from
released.
Fortnite.
Fortnite, and then obviously this now coming out now. There's obviously other titles in the future, but this is the first one, and that's kind of, other than the fact that it is a remake and a remastering at the same time of an older title, which makes the comparisons very interesting here. We can't play them both live at the same time, otherwise it's a bit confusing.
Yeah, that would be fun.
But yeah, this is essentially a remake of a game that came out, I think, originally in 2015, if I recall.
Or was it 2016?
2016, maybe. Yeah, sorry, my bad. Layers of Fear back then, and that was a Unity title. And as we know,
That's right.
obviously, Unity is usually used, especially back then, was more focused on like smaller indie AA titles and wasn't known for like graphical like excellence. And one of the things that marked the first Layers of Fear game actually was that it was a pretty good looking Unity game, which wasn't the expectation at the time. Unity didn't have that reputation, and here coming in again with Anshar Studio and obviously Bloober working together on this, it's a remaking of the entire effort, utilizing the new technology of Unreal Engine 5, but not all of it, right, Mikhail? Because I know the team here is using Lumen, but the team is not using Nanite. Do you know the decisions, why that decision was made not to use Nanite actually for the project?
Yes, of course. So when we started with making the game on Unreal Engine 5, Nanite was still in development, and we try to use it to our content for meshes, but at the time we see that what we created before on Unreal Engine 4, it was at this time not could easily migrated to Nanite. Also, our game is focused on small room with corridors, so it was also we didn't need Nanite for this scale of the world, because Nanite is also useful for open world where you have a lot of unique meshes, high quality meshes.
Oh yeah, so like in this game, due to the camera distance, you actually maybe have like maybe 1 or 2 LODs, not like an open world game where you'd have like 5 or 6, and then an imposter beyond that. Here you're so close that Nanite really doesn't bring too much to the table in terms of level of detail. That makes sense, actually. That's pretty good.
All right. So yeah, I guess for those that are wondering exactly how this game plays, this is indeed sort of a it's an adventure game essentially. To me, this feels like a modernization of classic CD-ROM adventure games from the 90s, where you're kind of exploring a location, you know, you're testing items, picking them up, and rotating the story's going to told through the things that you find. But what's really interesting about this, and we'll get there in a moment, is the way they do the sort of room shifting. So the game is constantly changing what happens around the player in real time. But actually, so I'm already seeing something in the chat regarding one of the key issues. So we're playing this on Xbox, but obviously one of the main issues we've had with Unreal Engine games lately is PSO compilation stutter. I'm sure you guys have been talking about this, and I'm curious if you can speak to the solution that you're using for this game, and whether you feel you've tackled that problem completely, or basically the state of what we can expect on PC.
Yes, this is a huge problem for PC gamers. So we implement mechanic from the engine. There is a PSO caching system, and we use it for layers of field. So it should be mostly invisible, this some traversal stuttering. But of course, we can guarantee that will be eliminated in 100%, because it depends on the hardware. And we use that solution to generate this cache on runtime. So we play a game on every settings and collect this data, and we cook them to the game. So this should eliminate this problem for the players.
Oh, wonderful.
Did you so when you're playing the game, though, it's always like in development. You're developing the game, and you're playing the game, and you're developing the game and playing the game, and things are changing constantly. Did you actually, I'm always curious, because obviously every developer is going to be doing this differently. Did you find moving over to Unreal Engine 5 versus your previous projects beforehand that you maybe both of you had worked on, that there were some things that you didn't expect that you would need to do in Unreal Engine 5, or that things that were more, maybe not as transparent or as easy to do as you originally thought they might have been?
This is a tricky question.
Yeah.
Let me think.
I would say
quite all right.
Probably there's always some challenge to it, to moving engines. It's like, it's never easy. You know, essentially, it's still the same engine, so you know a lot of the stuff, and what mostly catches you up is that the things that you think you know, but change slightly between them, not the big changes, because, well, even though we use Lumen, for example, and it was a learning experience, you know, so it took us, you know, we redid the lighting like 2 times over the course of the project. Yeah,
oh my
because,
gosh.
you know, when we started, we knew that we wanted to go on UE5, and Lumen offered us, the dynamic lighting especially. We wanted to kind of use it to the best of the ability, but not everything was known. It was changing between updates of the engine, so we had to, learn. We had to do things differently than before. So there is a lot of small things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's one thing that you can that's the thing that changed, that got us up. It's just a lot of smaller things that we had to learn and to kind of get over. But
oh yeah, sorry, please.
Yeah, no, it's just it's hard to say for especially for me. It's just when we started, it was a few years ago, and now you just remember the things that you did over the past 6 months maybe or a year. and that's just pushing everything to the end with what you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. One thing I wanted to ask though, real quick, if you could clarify, some people in the chat were asking whether. So we're playing the Xbox Series X version here, and I wanted to talk about the two modes. I already mentioned there's a quality and a performance mode, and I wondered if you could specify the differences that players can expect, because for instance. There's a software path for Lumen as well as a hardware accelerated path, and I believe you're tapping into that for this game.
Yes, quality mode is a hardware tracing mode.
Okay.
So it's a truly high quality lumen, which impact on the lumen global illumination and reflection. So we have really high quality and good high quality input data, because we operate on real geometry, not some approximation. So for example, a lot of small objects can react to this scene, and it's also quality mode is also a 4K mode resolution. When performance mode is 60 frames, and it's a software solution for better performance, and is this quality mode is software resolution that work on some approximation called distance field, and is really good approximation, but it's not exactly what players see finally. So it could generate some artifacts and doesn't fit well to the stand. But we are try to eliminate every these.
Okay.
Artifacts.
Understandable, yes, of course. So then to clarify then, right now we're looking at the quality mode, which is using hardware accelerated Lumen on the Series X, which is great. And the performance mode, you were saying, uses software Lumen and SDFs for generating the GI stuff. So, which is cool. Now, I do have one question. Another feature of that Epic introduced with Unreal Engine 5 and recent Unreal is their temporal super resolution feature. Are you making use of that for this?
Yes, of course. This is a main feature that also creates the quality performance mode in 60 frames.
Look at this.
Without that, it will be really hard to achieve at this quality of the image, final image. Temporal super resolution allow us to create upscaled image nearly equal to native 4K, because in performance mode we upscale image typically in 1080p to 1440p. Okay. But it's really depends on the scene, because it's dynamic resolution full. So sometimes it could be better or or worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before we moved on, though, I just wanted to highlight this scene here because this is a very dark, horror-filled game, but this is one moment where you actually get a peek at sun shining in through the windows, and it's fleeting because this disappears quickly, but it's a really nice showcase of the lighting features.
John, would you mind actually doing like a standing still and switching between the modes just really quickly?
Yeah.
Just to see, look at that reflection there, for example, on this, like on the painting. That's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, like the little highlight there.
A highlight, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if what changes here. So we're switching back to quality or performance mode.
Pretty similar.
Yeah. The main thing I've noticed in performance mode is you lose the reflections and mirrors.
Ah, yeah. That makes sense though, because I mean, Lumen software doesn't have access to the data of your character model.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you wouldn't see yourself. Actually, I have a question about setting up Lumen, because from talking with other developers in the past who are switching to UE5 from UE4, for example, Lumen requires you, and this is a house made of like a lot of hallways, and I don't know how the hallways are built, but Lumen requires you to like cut up objects so that they're not concave. Did you have to do that for a lot of the geometry that makes up the levels in this game, actually, to get it to work?
Yes, we need to cut some meshes, but it will not necessary for all of the meshes, because sometimes increasing a resolution of signed distance field, it's almost good. So we just leave some uncut meshes, and you can see that it works really great.
Yeah.
Real quick though, we have a couple of super chats here that I want to highlight. First one from Favaz Rusli. I probably said that wrong, but I tried. He says, "John, this is my first super chat. Oh, when will you do the Doom 3 DF Retro? And for Alex, will you do PC Time Capsule for GTA 4? Well, we appreciate that. Unrelated, but we appreciate that." Yeah. And then also one from Ryan Morrow who just says, "Hi, what did I miss?" And well, you know, it's good times. That's what you've missed. But the good times continue rolling. So, but later on, I think we'll take more questions for these guys if you like. But Alex, why don't you continue?
Yeah, that's interesting to hear, because actually in a horror game, you're not always going for like perfect realism with shadows. I mean, it's nice, but sometimes to enhance the like dread or fear of the player, you can make things even darker than they really would be in real life. And not cutting up the meshes, I imagine, could actually make some scenes darker in a cool way and still look good.
I'm also curious about the fact that, so the way this game works is that it's constantly shifting things. Like you'll look, I turned around and it's a completely different scene from where I just was. And the game does this constantly. And I'm curious if working with Lumen, what kind of impact this had on that, or how you approached this design element.
So I guess this probably was the biggest problem over the course of the project. So fortunately for us, we knew that we had to do it from the very beginning, and we used several different techniques to actually achieve it, depending on how much of it changes. So there are places where, you know, just objects around it change, and the Lumen also adapts to that. So you can see, especially if you have, you know, white objects, for example, then, you know, the scene brightens up or darkens. But, you know, when the difference isn't that big, then it's okay. When the entire room changes, for example, and, you know, everything behind you changes, then we put a lot of work to make sure that, you know, that it fits, that it happens at the correct time, that there aren't really that many bright objects. So we try to avoid, for example, if you do it in a bright space when, you know, a lot of, for example, white walls appear everywhere, then you will definitely see that. We teleport the player around copies of the same room or instances of the same room to do it. Sometimes you just, you know, appear objects and walls, but that probably kind of was the thing that we worked most over the course of the project. And as you said about Lumen, so it's a dark game, and we needed to make it dark, but we also needed for it to be predictable. So, you know, when you use artifacting to create some effect, you never know how it will appear sometimes. You know, you never know. Sometimes we had it in the beginning, how I think is that we had rooms that are fully connected, and then entire floor or the ceiling wasn't in the reflection in the shadow. So that was you see that it's wrong, but if not that's not something that we want to achieve, then you just see it as being wrong. So
I'm actually sorry. While we're here, I know people have been curious. How do you handle these lamps? There's a light source placed inside a lampshade, and you get this really nice effect around it. And I think people would like to hear more on how this was achieved.
So it's it's light inside in the lamp, but with some technique named light function EAS. It's a special texture that we can recreate real life light attenuation. So it is a really nice effect, and we create exactly how it would look in a real world.
Very
John,
cool. Yeah, I got the light. I got a light.
In the performance mode or the quality mode yet?
Quality.
I'm curious to see if there's visible bouncing.
Yeah,
I mean, there should be, but
there should be.
Yeah.
I need to find a nice colored object. So if I bounce this light off of the appropriate object, should we see a bounce light from that? So if I hold up the flashlight to like a red wall, for instance, will it color the scene red?
Yes, it should be, but it also depends on the scene on the wall. So it could be also sometimes a little subtle and not visible, like just that.
Yeah.
All right.
I love the idea though of because part of what John was saying, like when you turn around, the game world's already different. And if you had Lumen on and the game world looked radically different in terms of brightness, when you switched the geometry out or transported the player, you would see the light bouncing in front of your view, and it would ruin the surprise almost of the player turning around and seeing a different area. I find that really interesting and something I actually hadn't thought about with this before.
Also, we have a couple more chats in here I want to take. One from Shirzad Khan City, who asks, is there any plans for a VR version of this game?
That's a good question. You never say never, but to be honest, right now we're just focusing on getting it out and making sure that everything is as is. But
okay. Fair enough. And then we have one from Mr. Rusley, who says the questions for the developer. What is your reaction when getting on Unreal Engine 5, and what are the challenges when bringing this to consoles?
You want to take that? Just honestly, bringing it up to consoles, it's something we've done before, so it's probably, it's good for us to have that knowledge from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So we understand that those are our targets, that we need to hit it, and testing early, and we did that. We always try to kind of be in the performance kind of window to make sure that it works. And overall, I don't think it was that problematic.
Because we also before shipped Observer System Redux also on current gen consoles, and we know how it could be. So switching engine was just some changing the tool, but a lot of the things will not change.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, this part's nuts.
Yeah. So you are taking an original game with very similar visual design, but obviously on a different engine with different tech and much better looking. But how do you take those old assets and make them new? Are they completely different? Are you taking the original assets at times and then like adding on more polygons to the asset, or how exactly was the process of like remaking this game?
So we based on the original assets, but in time we just upgraded them. We create sometimes unique new meshes, but also we upgraded poly count and textures, especially where we need really high resolution textures for better experience. So it was some mashup with original assets and making that was upgraded and making some new meshes.
That's good. That's sensible too, because otherwise you're remaking the game twice, and you could still use those old assets, and that's kind of wasteful. Another good question here, because it's really applicable to UE5, is from W.A. Van Roos, about were Quixel textures and objects used in the game, like from the marketplace?
Right.
And if yes, how did you make them fit in the style of Layers of Fear?
I think that we didn't use Quixel assets.
No, I also don't think so. we try to kind of make sure that the style fits, especially, you know, since it's Layers of Fear 1 and 2, and we were adding new content to it, so we had to make new stuff. So we thought that it was safer for us to use our own assets. We probably used some during production, and for example, what we took from the original one to, you know, prototype quicker. So, you know, just make a set of rooms, we can do stuff here, and then we exchange that art for something that is made on our side. So yeah, I think we just try to fit with what we're trying to do, and bringing it outside that doesn't really fit. It takes the same amount of work sometimes to make it from the ground up on our side than remaking something or changing it, or changing materials to fit, textures to fit. It's just the same amount of work.
Also, cool. Quixel assets are sometimes really noisy because it's a lot of detail, and it could also create really some noise on the scene, which break our concept.
Yeah, I understand that. Sometimes it just doesn't fit within. And also, I think some of the Quixel assets are also they're just like the single LOD. They're not always used, you know, they're like made for nanites, some of them.
That's true.
So it wouldn't even fit anyway, necessarily. It would just be kind of wasteful.
Oh yeah, so we have a couple more super chats here to talk about. One from Wizards and Warriors. He asks, how has working with the Series X architecture been for the most part? How hard is this remake pushing its architecture, would you say? And to expand on that, we'd also like your thoughts on making this work on Xbox Series S.
It was some challenge because Series S is some kind new console for our, because it's a lot of how to say that we just want quality mode for this console, so we chose that we have one performance mode in 60 FPS. So it's it's some it's a Series X performance mode with some optimization that could run this exactly in stable frame rate.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Series S here, then I presume it runs at a lower resolution. It's probably not outputting at 4K. What other optimizations were done to make it run at 60 FPS on Series S?
Yes, its resolution is lower. We use around 800p to 1080p, and
okay.
For example, we also increase load distance. Decrease the load distance, so it will changes faster. Also, some foliage in other parts of the game have less density. So it's not a big optimization. It's just adjustment that allow us to run the game in stable 60 frames.
Okie doke. Oh wow, that's a nice one. Another super chat then we have from Super Googly. Super Googly. Okay, that's good. Shout out to John and Alex. Thank you. Can the developers promise? Can the developers promise there will be no stutters on my RTX 4090 at launch? Oh no! Wait, I wasn't paying attention.
No, that's okay. Hopefully it's saved. If not, we can go back.
Oh no, it's fine.
Okay, you're good. Okay.
So,
At least you got surprised.
Yeah.
if someone's rocking an RTX 4090 and a pretty solid CPU, like, what kind of experience do you think they'll get with this game? Being that this is one of the first non-epic Unreal Engine 5 games, if not the first to launch.
So that's always a tough question. So to be honest,
yeah, for sure.
For PC especially, everything kind of, you never know what the configuration is or what is in there, what happens. So we assume that it's gonna work really well. We tested with much lower minimal. So we try to kind of get much lower to make sure that it plays for a lot of people. Having said that, it's hard to promise anything in the PC world when every PC is different. It works, it works very differently. Yeah, but we're reasonably sure that it should work fine. Yeah.
So specifically thinking about PC again, there's been a lot of controversy as of late for GPUs, graphics cards that have 8 gigabytes of video memory. And that, that's been a problem as of late. This game has like high quality textures. It's using Lumen ray tracing. Did you have to make any special considerations for video memory on PC for different graphics cards?
Not really. We have some optimization based on the quality mode, but it's not really. It should be not a big problem with VRAM memory. So I don't know exactly how many VRAM we use on RTX 2070 because it's our recommended GPU, but I think it's around 5 gigabyte memory with ray tracing on and high quality. So it's not really good. A lot of memory, but of course with a high resolution and with no additional upscaling mode, so it could of course rise, but it should work.
It should
anyway.
Yeah,
it's
that's
okay.
a good. I mean, if it's using like 5 gigs, even at a pretty good resolution, that's great. You mentioned upscaling modes. Because the game supports, as of launch, I think the idea is FSR2, XeSS, DLSS, and then I think inbuilt TSRs in there probably too. Temporal super resolution from Unreal. How easy, or what was the integration like of all these things, like XeSS, DLSS, FSR2? Is it even a challenge for you at the team at all to add these things in?
Yes, because it's a lot of different technique, and every technique have some kind of plugin for the engine. So it was really easy sometimes, but of course we changed engine version. So after that, we also needed to update our plugin, and sometimes it for a long of time we hasn't any of upscaling mode because updating them a lot of many times was doesn't have some purpose. So it was really tough, but In the end, after switching to new engine version, integration, every upscaling technique was really simple, and we unify this integration in our UI menu.
Mm-hmm. Good.
All right,
Good. John, you're in a cutscene right now.
Yeah, I just got trapped in some sort of painting room from Heck. That was certainly something. I love these shadows here from outside. Oh well, and the nice volumetrics from the windows. So actually, I'm curious. Like for these plants out here, do you just place some sort of like plant mesh out there and move it around with a wind simulation, or is there actually like an outside area to the map? Like, I'm curious how you box all these rooms in, since obviously you're not going out there.
It's just a small level behind the window.
Okay.
That we create some depth for the player. So, like you say, we didn't get out of this room, but we want to create some believable world that there is something outside. So we add a lot of meshes, like these trees, that we also create some nice effects on the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
For shadows, so Unreal Engine 5 also adds in virtual shadow maps, and those can make shadow maps like pretty high res looking, and also they like blur them in a way to make them look like physically correct shadows with like a nice penumbra and stuff. Did the team investigate using virtual shadow maps for the game, and does the game use them?
Yes, we investigated them. Finally, we decided not to use them because it creates a really nice and real-world shadows with height edge on the begin of the shadow and smooth them far from the shadow caster. But in the end, we use a lot of soft shadows to create some atmosphere. So in this case, we don't need them to recreate these effects. So we use old technique, shadow casters, shadow depth maps. So we create exactly what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because I'd imagine if you created a scene where you didn't design it with them in mind, and all of a sudden you had like really sharp shadows next to a, I don't know, like a candle or something like that, it could look a little bit weird and maybe like Doom 3 like.
Yeah,
not exactly what you want for your game that's supposed to be soft and atmospheric.
And you touched upon it earlier when you said,
Wait a minute.
you don't always want something realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry.
This could be a fun thing to talk about.
What's that?
That's probably something that we kind of missed. But that kind of happens, to be honest, since we're in the kitchen. That's probably something that one of the objects that disappears or appears between you walking by, and we must have done something wrong in the setup.
So like,
I think this is a good opportunity to address this kind of thing, I think, though, right? Because it's part of the challenge of shipping any game is dealing with all these little tiny things that crop up.
Definitely. When Michał talked about it before, for the Xbox Series S, we want to also minimize the amount of testing that we need to do. So if we don't do anything too specific on that platform, then we can test it more properly, and it still takes a lot of people and a lot of time to make sure that it works, and a lot of guys working today to keep making sure that the game still works, and some things will just fall through, unfortunately. But overall, it's
So the thing is, like, a game is a lot of moving parts, and
like this globe.
Like the globe, it's always spinning on its axis, and I feel like there's a very big difference between a game shipping with that's one of the things John and I always try and communicate in our videos. We don't try and pick out small flaws.
Yeah, exactly.
And then just like highlight them and parade them around. It's something actually we really dislike at DF because it usually misses the bigger picture. Rather than we're interested in like big flaws or big ideas or like big good things in a game. So we rare like there's times where I've been reviewing a game and I find like a tiny like bug and I just don't there's no reason to report on it because it doesn't actually reflect the entire game experience. But there's other times where we review a game and there's like a lot of issues, and then we'll start talking about like visual errors. We'll see because it reflects the entire experience at that point. So just to reiterate, like finding a visual bug in a game, it happens all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
In this game, it's so weird at times that it almost kind of works. You know, you're like, am I seeing a bug or is this a psychological trick?
That happens in our team, to be honest. You know, someone sees something. Is it intended? Because I don't know, but it looks weird enough that it might be intentional, and you know.
So there's a question here, a super chat question from DJG.
Oh yeah.
I'm presuming that's how you say it. Whatever. Have you, the team, had any discussions about Apple Vision Pro in any capacity? It's basically the new VR headset or AR headset from Apple. Have you guys thought about it at all?
So definitely too early to. Yeah. But we did. So it also comes up on the Silicon Max. So we did work with Apple, but you know, the Vision Pro is just too fresh.
Yeah.
Actually,
so for this game is also launching on Mac, is it not? I'm not mistaken. So actually, for that process, is that you just exporting with Unreal to the Mac platform, or is it actually like a more intensive labor aspect for you to get this game running on Mac?
That's a good question, but in here, actually, it was pretty smooth, and we got a lot of help from Apple to do it. So
good.
And it was really smooth, to be honest. It's just, you know, a couple of small changes from Windows, and it wasn't making any troubles. Mm-hmm. And which is good because I've had previous experience with that, and it was much harder, and it took us really a long time to make it work. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the new architecture apparently works really well.
It's great. So question about another thing about the game, but this is separate from the Mac discussion, is we're looking at the game earlier. You pointed out a light earlier with IES profiles. And this game was like currently as it is, it only runs with Lumen on. You really can't turn it off, usually. So are there any lights in the game that use the emissive properties of Lumen at all, where there's actually no analytical light or point light or spotlight there, but it's just using the glow texture from the light? Is there any light in that, like in the game, using that?
I think that are some thing like that, but it was a really small number. And it's more visible in the second game, where it's a lot of some emissive surface, and from them Lumen was a really great improvement to light the scene. But also Lumen is always running when you see some really bright particles, like example fire in the room. And the Lumen was generated also from them because Lumen works also in screen space, so it also generates some data from the viewport.
Yeah, that was because I was looking in that room and I was saying, like, because usually in games when they place fire billboards everywhere, they place like a point, like they place like a point light on the ground, and I've shown it. That's awesome looking. Usually you can see like the point lights in the ground and it looks really obvious, but here in this scene it just looks like glowy, and that's what you would expect. So that's kind of cool.
The fire looks really good here.
It's one of the things that when I reviewed Metro Exodus 2 Colonels kernels, that they used emissive ray tracing lighting in that game too, and that had a big effect for all the fire effects, which is cool about Lumen. I think that's actually great. Oh,
I did see one question that somebody posed, and I see this often, and they just say, "Is Lumen ray tracing?" And I would say yes.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's just marketing at that point. It's kind of like when people say RTX and they mean ray tracing.
Exactly.
It's
a form of ray tracing.
There's a great question here from Wizards and Warriors. Thank you for doing a super chat. I'm a huge fan of cinematic high sample rate motion blur. So does this game use per object motion and camera blur? John and Mikhail?
Yes.
Yeah.
It does have nice motion blur.
It does have motion blur. Which you can turn off too if you want.
Yes, of course. It should be in the menu.
Yeah.
Let's show this to people actually, because this is important. You can adjust your film grain and the sharpness. You can turn off motion blur, lens flares, and bloom. And it has the performance and graphics quality mode available that you can change anytime. Of course, a nice gamma adjustment screen. So I mean, that's actually pretty good options, I would say, especially for a game like this that's fairly constrained. That's I think players appreciate that.
Did you ever examine? It's a directed, like, horror atmospheric experience. Did you ever examine putting a field of view on the consoles, like the ability to adjust field of view on consoles? Because some people, even if they're playing on a console, they like to see like more of the game scene.
Oh yeah. Field of view.
We did. So ultimately, we went without it. So it's not impossible. It just is causing issues for us, especially what we talked about. For example, when the room changes around you, a bigger field of view, kind of you see more, and then it is harder for us to change that. You have to load more stuff and that field of view also more seen, since Lumen works in screen space, that also changes that as well. So the lighting changes. There is a lot of kind of little things that were causing problems. Particle density, for example, because you see more, then the particles become less dense because more area that they have to take on. So there was a lot of stuff that we had to kind of overcome, and ultimately we decided, for the reason, the changing environments and the stuff, that it's best for us to make the game as we see it, so to be sure that we can just hit that level that we need.
Mm-hmm. Is that also? I saw questions in chat earlier. Does that also affect the player's ability on PC to use like an ultra wide monitor in like 21:9 aspect ratio, for example? I don't know how the team. I don't know if the game supports 21:9. Honestly, what is that like?
Yeah, that's kind of the core. At the core, it's the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at it because that some people really want it, and we are aware of that. But for the launch, we just needed to make sure that what we have works.
Okay, that is very reasonable, obviously.
One quick thing I want to address for everyone is I'm sorry that this is only a 1080p stream. I wish we could stream at 4K. Because 1080p apps on YouTube live streams absolutely murders the visual quality of a dark game like this. But unfortunately, German internet bandwidth is largely poor, and my connection is not good. It's not good enough, unfortunately.
But even then, I once tried. I've only streamed once for DF, and I tried once 4K, and I have a pretty good upload on my end, and it still wasn't enough. Like the game would freeze.
It's tough.
Like a freeze. Like so, and it's not my PC, obviously. That's like a 5950X. It should be completely fine. It's just the streaming on YouTube. It's okay, but it could be way better. It could be so much better.
This area looks awesome, though. Wow.
Yeah, it actually gives me Observer vibes, that area, because the color scheme.
Oh yeah.
That's a cool game, actually. Because since you did work on Observer too, I'm a little curious. You worked with the voice files and the. This is totally lame for me to ask. but also like the likeness of Rutger Hauer, the famous actor.
Oh yeah.
Was that kind of like cool and also a little creepy because he passed away around that time period of the game's launching, I believe? What was like working on the Observer game, like with that kind of famous actor?
So for us, we actually, we did the system redux, so
Yeah.
just for the new console. So we kind of didn't add anything, and what we added it was using voice lines that were already there.
Yeah,
it was sad, to hear about his passing then, but
yeah.
to be honest, for us, we were, I think, too far away from that to really get that. And we talked to the guys about it from the original team at Bloober that that for them at least it was special, and
That's cool.
they had that experience.
I'm just looking at John
man.
here.
Looking at everything we're doing here. I'm just trying to play and stumble around through this world. This really is kind of like I enjoy it. It's like a nice horror adventure game.
Yeah. And by the way, people, John, you should just reiterate,
Yeah.
like it is running well on your end. Like sometimes I'd imagine even the streams can drop frame rates or something like that.
Yeah, I have tested this. I played this through on my actual TV and checked out the performance data, and it's a very solid 30 FPS in quality and like a rock solid 60 in the performance mode. So the performance is a non-issue.
Yeah, so just in case you are seeing ever any issues on YouTube, it is 100% YouTube streaming, most likely. So don't worry about that. It's just another issue that we have with games.
Even here through my capture card, it looks kind of jittery, but if I actually look at the...
Yeah.
So that's just a problem with the whole streaming setup. So we're doing it live.
Yeah.
We're doing it live.
You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tony Escobar there sent a little super chat to say, "So great to see you guys live. Thank you for exploring the technical aspects of the game live. Keep up the great work." And thank you. And
Thank you,
glad
Tony.
These guys joined us as well to talk about this stuff. I know it's hard, especially if you've never done it before, but hopefully it's going all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh man, that's slightly unsettling. Not gonna lie.
Actually, I'm curious about. So one thing I did notice, I did play the game, partially on the PC, and actually I want to say I'm a little sorry because I actually did probably give a less than favorable opinion of my original playthrough on one of our DF Directs. It's mainly because I think I played it on almost too high end of a PC to appreciate how good it was looking. As that silly as that sounds, because if I probably played it on something like a mid-range PC, I'd say this looks incredible for the visual performance. Because if this is running like this on a Series X, it actually probably runs really well on a mid-range PC, which I probably should have played it on instead of a super high-end one and been like, whatever. But one thing I did notice that I thought was really cool was the, from a tech art aspect, you have a lot of paintings in the game.
Oh,
and
yeah.
when you get up close, there's like you can see like the paint in it. How was that achieved exactly?
So this is an additional layer in the material system, and we add some detail to expand the quality of the painting. So it's
I'll do it.
tiling texture, additional tiling texture that
wait,
increase the quality, and with that we can create some really nice reflection and detail from the lighting.
Does the game actually use a lot of tile detail textures on most surfaces? Is that like a common part of the asset work in the game?
It depends on the asset. For the wall and some floor, we use tiling texture, but more specific meshes like some
Like a
prop
Peloton.
hero.
Yeah.
It's a dedicated texture created for exactly this model.
Wow. Okay.
And so for making textures in the game like this, obviously you did talk about earlier remaking assets and things like that. Are a lot of the textures that aren't for example, what if you made a new asset for the game for the remake of the second or the first game? And where are you sourcing the texture from? How are you making the texture exactly? Are you utilizing libraries at all? Are these all, is there photo sourcing being done? How exactly are textures created for a new asset in this game?
Whoa, look at that. You see that?
Yeah.
Still got texture loading. But yes, go ahead, please.
So in most cases, we just created them using some from the scratch. We create some new textures from our internal library. So we create some, for example, tiling textures for the wood, and we try to use them for other meshes. So we can make them similar for the whole game, for example. But sometimes, of course, we needed to create new texture, and we use, of course, for them to create a substance painter with a lot of texture base. But generally, we use some internal textures that create before, and we use them to achieve the effect.
Just watching John here.
I'm trying. I'm trying to figure out.
It's not easy.
I can't hear this. I can't hear the sound, so it's hard to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And by the way, one thing I like about this game is that it's another one of those rare titles that uses binaural audio. And did you guys? Is that just pulled from the original, or did you have to create new audio for this version? I'm curious how that works, because it's not something we see often. And for those wondering, like, if you've ever heard like a binaural sound, like a soundtrack, it's like you can use a head mic, which is literally like a human head-shaped like dummy head with microphones inserted down the ear canal to sort of reproduce how the human ear works. But obviously, I don't think everything was recorded that way. So how do you actually do the binaural audio simulation stuff?
So that's a good question, and I probably won't give you the best answer since I'm not
the audio guy. Yeah.
But we definitely used part of the library for the second game where they recorded a lot of sound this way. So
cool.
Wow. Okay. Cool. That's
they actually did use the binaural head mic.
Yeah. So we used that, and then the rest was using Wwise, which was for audio solution.
Course.
And it's a mix, so not everything is there, but overall it creates the effect, and then often it's hard to distinguish them when they work, and it's kind of like art. So we focus on the most important things, and they work, and the rest kind of just goes into the background.
Oh yeah, you can kind of see the cracks in the painting in the canvas here. Hopefully on stream. If I just stop for a second.
Yeah, let the bit rate sit still for a while. YouTube, man.
Oh, and by the way, this does work on all stereo headphones. Binaural audio doesn't require any specific hardware to work. It's just a stereo signal.
It's great.
So yeah, plug in headphones if you play this game. This was also something that was used a lot in Hellblade. Yeah. So it's the same kind of idea where it kind of messes with your head because it simulates how the human ear works in terms of the sound playback. Man, some of these scenes are just crazy though. Look at this. Upside down, destroyed version of the room.
Wow. How'd you like it? That's definitely, the madness is part of the game. So, when it comes to realism, it's kind of... It's good so that you feel that it's kind of, it looks good, it looks real, it's in that style, and then when we break it with the weird things and the crazy stuff, it just works better.
And actually, when does this actually release then? I think it's very soon. Is it this week?
Yeah, this week, 15th, so in 2 days.
Well, congratulations on that too. Obviously, shipping a product is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So congratulations to you and the team on actually getting anything done.
Thanks. Yeah. Our boss often says that, it's a miracle that any game gets done.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, I really love the lighting in this game, I have to say. this does help a lot.
Yeah.
All these different lights and the way the light spills across the environment.
So the original game and is Unity. Second game is Unreal 4, if I recall.
Yeah.
Are you like for like the game actor part of this? So like in terms of gameplay, like are you just transfer it like in terms of the way the camera moves, in terms of the way like the hand interaction system works? Are those pulled from the second game and then used in the Unreal Engine 5 version of this game, or did you also have to change that for this release of the game? Like how easy is it actually iterating on these things over time?
So I think it depends. It's a case-by-case basis. So for example, for the hands that you asked, it's one of the things that we've added to the game. So in the previous ones, there was less interactions with the hands. So we've added so that you pick up notes, pick up items, can look at them, and then, you know, more animations. So since we had to do that and we've expanded, then we've made them like a new thing from the ground up and with the character as well. So, and especially since, you know, the first one was in a different engine, and, you know, keeping parity between the two was important for us. A lot of this stuff is just something that we had to make for both of them. So we've added, for example, the flashlight or the lantern that you see in here. It's added for the second game as well. So we still had to, you know, do that in there. And since you had a active light in the levels, then, you know, those levels needed to change, because then you can, you know, point a light at something in the darkness, and there was nothing there before, because there was no need, and for now, right now, there is a need for it. So it's a lot of work, but it's a case by case. Some stuff from the second one, especially, you know, just, you know, we took it and it worked, and it worked great. So depends.
That's awesome.
Actually, there's another super chat here from Dan the Dev, and I like this question because he says, how do the developers feel about not having to worry about light maps and baking lights anymore, thanks to Lumen?
It's really cool because we see the final image right now. Yeah, we need to wait several hours. It depends on the stand, but in the previous project, wall baking lighting was about from 8 to 9, 12 hours.
Oh my gosh!
And that was using
you know,
light
you
mass.
create something, and you need to wait to see it tomorrow. So
and then you make a change, and it's invalidated.
I can't even believe this. I would die doing that. If I had to wait 8 to 9 hours to see the results of my work every time I did it, I wouldn't do my work. It would be awful. Sorry.
I mean, Alex, that would be like us doing video editing, going back to just cutting together pieces of film and using tapes.
I know, right? Taping film together.
Like nonlinear video editing helped a lot.
Yeah, so much. That's amazing.
Lumen is a great improvement.
Oh, that's creepy.
So actually getting for the hand stuff of picking up, because there's a variety of objects in the game, are those each of one of them a specific hand animation, or did you come up with like a generic hand, like where it's grasping like this, and then you use some sort of systemic way to get the fingers to grasp it better?
That's a good question. So we tried to do it in a generic way, and the grip itself would work. But the problem was with the way the character is holding it. So sometimes, you know, the same grip, just even though you can hold it, but it doesn't work. Like if you're holding a light item, you can still hold it in a grip, but it looks really weird.
Or like this clock here, he uses two hands.
Yeah, exactly. So we're using a mixture of both. So there are some items that are similar enough that we can use the same grip or the same basis and just change the fingers a bit, and there are some items that just require a completely custom thing to make it work. So it's a mixture of both.
Yeah,
I gotta stand back for a second and just let people look at this, not moving the camera so the bad YouTube stream can catch up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, Michael Bjork here pops in and says, "Love binaural audio, sound recordings, but they can still be mucked up by always on 3D audio processing. Any tips for those that may be missing out?"
That question goes too deep into audio. Sorry, I can. Yeah. So our audio guys would probably.
They would know.
Yeah, they would know, definitely.
Understandable. Oh man. Okay. Wow.
Thanks for playing like a champ, by the way, John, because John and we make videos, like a couple of videos where I play like an old PC game together while John plays the old console version of the game. And playing while talking live and saying interesting things is very hard.
Yes, that's why I needed you here, buddy.
Yeah, I know. You always need, and you also need someone reading the chat a bit. You know, it's not easy. So I would be dying way more than John.
I'm not a pro streamer like like those Call of Duty dudes that do stuff. Like no way.
But those League of Legends dudes. Yeah. No. Let's see if there's any other good questions from the chat at all here.
Gosh, go ahead. What do you see?
Currently, this is maybe not so related to the development of the game, but it's always an interesting question. The game's coming out on Steam, and I presume it's being launched digitally. But has the team considered a physical release at all?
Oh yeah, a disc version.
A disc version.
That is a good question. So we definitely consider it. There's always conversations, but right now we're just focusing on the digital. It's always managing the amount of work, and as I said, testing and how far in the past do you need to have it to kind of hit a deadline. So yeah, right now just the digital to kind of get through it.
That was an expert PR move right there. Well done.
Glad you liked it. But as I said, those conversations are happening all the time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Just pick up this bottle here.
You
can kind of. I like the glass.
That's great.
That looks great right there.
The area light. It's one thing I really like about modern games with PBR. When PBR first started, there was a lot of point lights still in game, so it kind of looked really plasticky everywhere.
It doesn't work. Exactly.
And now with area lights, it looks quite a bit better.
Oh my god, it's creepy. Yeah. Is that? Yeah, it's little like doll mannequin heads growing in the ceiling. Ooh.
that bourbon whiskey you just had in your hand.
Oh no. Yeah. They're everywhere. They're in the tar. Actually, again, without the sound and playing on the stream, can't really appreciate it. But I was the story to this is pretty engaging, and I had not played the original, so I was fresh coming to this, and it's pretty messed up.
Yeah, what John was saying though about the mid '90s FMV kind of walking around experience. That's what I actually got when I played the demo, because especially when the first phone call rings, that's what it really reminded me of at that moment.
Oh yeah. I would have dreamt of this type of game when I was a kid, because back then it would have been clicking on predetermined shots and like using a video to transition between the areas, but now you can experience it all in real time.
Yeah, it definitely is something like that. It's just an adventure that you kind of get to know. The thing that happened is just very creepy and sometimes scary to kind of find out what happens.
So, question for both of you personally. You both have been working in game development. I don't know for how long exactly, but like, what are some inspirational games that you've played in your life that inspire the work you make?
You had to ask the toughest question, probably.
Okay, well, yeah, well, it doesn't have to be one game. You could just say like an aspect of a game.
For me, it's a lot. I'm kind of more guided by the story and the narrative of things. So RPGs, kind of the first, the isometric, like the Baldur's Gates and stuff like this.
Oh, so PC style RPGs.
Yeah. Then probably up to everything that BioWare did. And Mass Effect 2, still one of my favorite games. So anything that kind of brings up more story into something else, kind of is something that I I really want to do, and kind of is always an inspiration for me.
And for me, I'm a technical guy, so I first looking for good quality, but also good performance. So I really like when game looks nice and works smooth. So it is my first look for the game, and for me. I was a PC gamer, but now I'm a only console gamer, and I looking for the game on the console, and especially how it works and what other creates, how it works with this quality, and also, and I want to recreate exactly the same effect in my game. So this is my goal to achieve.
So like Mikhail, when you play a game like on your PlayStation 5 or Xbox at home, do you like go up to the screen and you like look and you're like, how are they doing that?
Yes, all the time. When I play a lot of this one title, so I don't look at that because I see everything at the start. But yeah, every game is just some time that I stop, look, and think how they achieve that.
We get this question sometimes from from people in our audience because we look at games from a technical perspective. Do you ever feel that since you know how games are made, that it takes away the magic of playing a game at all? A little bit at times, like you can see the strings behind the mannequins.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Sometimes, but it's when you play a lot and at some time you just enjoy the game. You don't think about how it works. Yeah, but enjoy, and it's sometimes really hard, but you can think about only about the work.
Yeah, I think you always know, but you still can enjoy it. It's just as well for you guys. I think you know a lot about the technical stuff, but probably still you can play and get some enjoyment out of it.
From my perspective, it actually usually increases my enjoyment when it works really well, because then I appreciate the craft more at that point. I say like, that's clever, that's really clever, and I enjoy it more.
We should probably start winding down here so we don't keep you guys for too long. Is there any other burning questions we have from Alex or audience?
Yeah, so let's just wait a little bit for so in the audience, are there any more questions you want to ask before we start winding down this stream? So
I just switched to performance mode, by the way, for those curious.
Yeah. So earlier, just a really quick question for me is, you did mention that you had to, at least twice today, you've already mentioned that like the screen space aspect of Lumen requires you to think about some things at times. Like was that a burden? Was that something that you started to do eventually naturally? You thought like in terms of screen space in your brain all the time? Like, what is that like as a developer?
For me, it's really easy to understand it, but for the lighting team, it was really tough to understand how it works exactly. And sometimes we want something like a really bright, little small object, but we know that in the Lumen, it will cause some artifact. It will overbright the scene. And so we need some compromission, and we can achieve everything that we want, but it's always thinking what is better for the game, for the final quality. We can just think about one pieces. We need to think about whole picture. So we use screen space effects because it's really fast and create best quality, I think, because we use the data, the same data what players see. So it's like free information. So it's really hard to say what to do exactly, but screen space effects is really great improvement, and sometimes we have to deal with some side effects.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. There is one good question from the chat that I think is like a good rounding out question, because usually when I do interviews with developers, I actually ask something similar to this. So I'll pose it in a certain way. Christian Bittner is asking, what was the most challenging element of the game to implement? But I'm also going to ask, as a part of that, what was one of your favorite parts of making this game?
For me, it was moving from Unreal 4 to Unreal Engine 5 and use this really nice stuff. We didn't use Nanite, but experimental with them. It was a really good experience, and we know that next project we needed Nanite or the virtual shadow maps. So working with Unreal Engine 5 was a best experience.
For you, Dave? And for you, Damian?
That's a good question. I would say that probably, more on the game design side, exploring the horror, the changing environments, and kind of thinking in that way that, especially for horror, that sometimes you can have nothing, and that creates, more tension and more emotion.
Yeah.
And, it's constant, especially from us in the team, when you play it, day by day for a few hours, there's always like, there's not enough stuff in here, but then, it's always a challenge. But at the same time, when then you look at someone who hasn't seen it and plays it, and they are kind of scared, emotional, they just go slowly and look at every corner. It's really rewarding when that works, when that little thing kind of creates a lot of emotion in the players. So it's still a challenge, I say. Everyone that kind of works on the team is a bit, or is not scary anymore because you know how it's made. But when it works, when that one event that you work on works exactly as you want, and then people kind of get that effect, it's awesome. It's an awesome feeling.
Cool.
That's great, man. That's awesome.
Oof. Okay. Just to wind down, a couple more super chats you missed. Eric Benoit earlier, by the way, said, "Great job, great looking game, very impressive."
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks.
For the super chat.
And then Binyabik said, "Game reminds me a lot of Observer System Redux with the constant level changes. Is it similar tech? Loving it, buying day one." So yes, I get it. I suppose it does remind people of that game for a good reason.
Yeah. So it uses the same stuff. Is it the same tech? I would say we use it differently. So we had to change it a bit for Lumen, for example. So before you could fake more easily, but since we're using more realistic lighting, then you have to kind of make it a different way. So we had to find a way to achieve the same effect, basically.
Yeah, that teleporting you mentioned of copies of the same room, that sounds like a Lumen thing.
Yep.
That's cool, but that's amazing, actually. I love that.
Okay, one final question before we finish up here. He says, "Question for devs, shrooms or LSD?" You don't have to answer, but... All right, but I think that's probably going to do it for this one. I really appreciate you guys joining us here on the stream to talk about the game while I bumbled around through this crazy mansion.
amazing.
Yeah, you did well.
Check out those particles, by the way. I love that.
Oh yeah, floating stuff.
Floating ash in the air. And of course, my wingman, Alex, thank you as always.
It was a pleasure, Doc.
Excellent. And thank you to everyone joining us here in the chat. It was great. And I again apologize for any low quality YouTube streaming shenanigans because, you know, YouTube streaming, internet bandwidth, all these things, yeah, they don't always play nicely. We'd love to upload in the highest quality, but streams, it's tough. But that's going to do it for this video. So again, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for joining us on the stream, and